What's up, Collider TV Talk fans? Josh McCouga here with a brand new show on the Collider TV Talk channel. I'm joined by the lovely, the amazing, the talented and intelligent Roxy Stryer, who until today thought it was St. Louis and not St. Louis.
That's what you said. You did that.
I did it, and so did Nellie. We're doing a show here called Hypothetical Questions. Roxy and I have been talking about doing a show about television for a very long time, and we're finally getting it off the ground. So,
wow.
We're doing it.
That just made me so excited.
I know,
That's
right?
wild. We have been talking about doing something for 5 years.
I know. It's been a long time coming, so here we are. Hypothetical questions. For those that are wondering what this is going to be, we're just going to start the show with one hypothetical question, all in the TV landscape, right? So it could go from, what if Lucy was still on TV today, or something of that nature, and we'd see what the television landscape would like. It's all hypothetical scenarios, and one hypothetical question could lead to another hypothetical question, hypothetical situation. That's what this show is all about.
I'm now thinking about that Lucy one.
See?
We should save that.
Yeah, ready to put it on the table.
You have the notepad.
Oh, that's right. What Lucy?
Everybody
What
pause,
if Lucy?
pause
Here we
for
go.
notes.
What if
Hold
Lucy?
for notes.
Okay.
There we go.
So, this show is going to be about 30 minutes. You can find it right here on the Collider TV Talk feed. Go to Collider Podcast, subscribe to the channel. You can see the main show on Fridays with Thad Williams and myself, and hopefully Roxy will join us on there sometimes.
Yes.
You'll see reviews of certain shows, like Roxy and I did Ozark.
Yeah, we did Ozark.
We did an
We also
Ozark
talked
review.
about the Emmys.
Yes,
so we've done a couple of things.
And Roxy watches just as much television, if not more, than me.
It's gross.
It's a lot of TV. And you also watch some shows that I will never watch, and that's where we differ, but also arguing is fun, but it's not arguing as much as it is a friendly discussion about television.
I try to get you over to my side of the fence, and you try to get me over to yours, and sometimes it works. Like I got you on Grace and Frankie.
Yeah. Oh, you did.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
That one worked.
Wow.
You got to sell it well, but I still haven't hooked you on Big Brother.
No.
You know, I gotta work on these things slowly.
Yeah.
It's the long game, you know?
I'll tell you, and I turned you on to Mrs. Maisel.
Yeah,
and you
did.
couldn't have been more excited about that.
Really good. Friendship, you know?
Friendship. So when you said other side of the fence, I'm sort of like you're Wilson and you're Tim the Toolman Taylor, or
That's what they call me.
Roxy the Toolman Taylor. Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
how'd you know?
Nailed it. So today's hypothetical question.
Yes. Should we do a drum roll?
Yeah. Oh, do you want to do a drum roll? Mm-hmm. Oh, you're gonna hit the.
Whoa. What was that?
That was. You know, like in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, when we're on the front lawn and they're doing the drum roll.
You know what's not good?
What?
When we ask for a drum roll and my closest thing is that does not sound like a drum roll.
Not so much.
Is that better?
That's terrible. But St. Louis is a place apparently, and so is your drum roll.
The S.
And that's what you do. It's not Illinois. So today's hypothetical question, Roxy, is: what if Seinfeld never existed? Okay. So that's where we start.
It's actually kind of a depressing one to start on
know.
when you think about it, because first of all, obviously we can talk about the landscape of television, which would be so different, but also, Josh, it's one of your favorite shows of all time.
I think it is my favorite show of all time.
And it's definitely up there for me.
Okay.
So
Have you ever met somebody that hasn't watched Seinfeld?
Yeah, I actually take issue with that,
Yeah, me
because
too.
anybody that you talk to who's never seen it says, I'll never watch Seinfeld.
Right.
Try it, bro.
Yeah.
Try it before you say that.
It's very similar to me when somebody says, "Oh, I don't drink," and I'm like, "Oh, did you have a problem? Like, are you sober or something?" No, I tried it once. I didn't like the taste, and I was like, "Did you drink enough to get drunk? Because if you did,
Feel
you
very
might-"
similar to you on that one.
Right?
I don't know if that's our best educational moment, but I definitely feel the same. If you have an issue, you do you, boo.
Right.
But if you tried it and you don't like it, and it was the one time, who likes it the first time?
That's too much. It's too small of a sample
You gotta
size
commit
for you.
to it.
I agree.
Commit to
100%.
drinking.
Commit to the drink. But okay, so what if Seinfeld never existed? So have you ever seen in like the Seinfeld documentary that they had on Fox? It
I
was
don't
like
think so.
kind of a history of the show, kind of a situation. They showed that the apartment was actually in downtown LA, near downtown LA.
Jocks on Fox?
Jocks on Fox. Guys, we're trying to find a hashtag for the show that isn't hypothetical questions, because that's probably popular. We're trying to find a Josh and Roxy hashtag together.
So that's Jocks, which we're not.
Yeah.
I go to the gym sometimes, so do you.
But it's JOX.
Yeah.
I don't go to the gym ever. I work out in my home.
I've seen you working out outside.
In the park. I'll go to a park, but never to a
That's called
gym.
the gym, the outdoor gym.
The outdoor gym. It's a park full of pipes, basically, and I just, do pull-ups and stuff.
And then Fox rhymed with Jocks.
Yes.
So but we're not foxes.
Listen, if you're out there, hashtag it or just at me at Josh McCougar and Roxy at Roxy Stryer, RoxyStriar.
Good one.
I see it in my head. At Josh McCougar, and tell us what our hashtag would be. Is it Joxy? Is it Rosh? Is it Rashi? Is it Roshua? Is it Roxawa?
And also let us know some hypothetical
Joxawa?
questions that we should be asking.
Correct.
And I do want to get back to the show, the topic, but I also have to ask you this very important thing.
Okay.
What if there are many fox? Are they foxes?
Yes.
It's foxes.
Feeks.
The folks.
The faux. The Faux?
Fee-fi, faux fox.
I don't know. I'm guessing it's foxes. I would think
Foxes.
it's not feeks.
Look at that bunch of foxes.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of foxes.
I think it's a
haggle of foxes.
No, it's like a pack of foxes, like a wolf pack, a fox pack.
Yeah,
It's like a cat thing.
Wolf is wolves, not wolves.
All right, let's get to our thing.
Foxes.
Foxes.
It's not sounding
I
right.
think it's foxes. All right, we've already started. We're already here.
Yada, yada, yada.
Yada, yada. Oh, well done. There you go.
It would
Okay.
not be there, though. Do you think it would be a thing?
Okay. If Seinfeld didn't exist, I think there would be so many different things that would not be in our common lexicon.
Pop culture references.
Pop culture. I honestly don't think if there wasn't a Seinfeld that we wouldn't have Thursday night event television in the 90s. Because Thursday night event television, Seinfeld spawned Friends. In my opinion, I think Seinfeld was the precursor to Friends, and they put it in that Thursday night lineup. And if they hadn't put it in that Thursday night lineup, I don't know where Friends exists. Because Seinfeld it was a great lead-in for Friends, and then that became the event television. Because when I was, Friends, I think the final season of Friends was 2004, correct?
Well, it started in 94, so the final season, 10 season, would have gone to 94 to 95, probably.
No, you mean 2004, 2005.
Yeah, sorry, 2004 to 2005.
Okay, so
it started.
But I feel like it was my senior year in college. I'm showing my age. So it was 2004. Was that May of 2004?
I think that would have been 2005.
Okay.
I do have a phone I could look it up on,
Yeah.
but I refuse.
Okay. My phone does not work for the.
Okay, I'll check.
I did not. I woke up and it did not work today.
Check.
But I think personally that if Seinfeld didn't exist, there are things that we definitely wouldn't see going down the line, right? So the genius minds behind Seinfeld that launched careers: Jerry Seinfeld, Larry David.
2004.
2004. So I was right. So Friends came in 2004.
Good for you for being right. That's the important thing.
And the Seinfeld finale, can you look up Seinfeld finale?
Only because it would have 10 years would made it to 2003 math.
Right. There you go.
Because each is a year.
Correct.
I see.
See what I did there?
I'll check Seinfeld.
Seinfeld ended, I believe it's 98.
Okay. Yep.
98.
89 to 98.
So there you go. And this first season of Seinfeld was only 6 episodes, and it was a summer show. And then it got picked up.
And people hated it.
They couldn't stand it. So
Was that cool lingo?
Hated? Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty good.
Foxes.
Folks.
Foxes. Fight.
Fikes? That can't be right. So you had the first 6 episodes, and then it got 13. And Larry David talked about how he went to bed and he couldn't sleep because he thought, how am I going to think up 13 episodes of Seinfeld? And then it goes 10 full seasons, 11 seasons, whatever the case may be, and creates probably, in my opinion, the most quotable show of all time.
I would say yes. However, I do think it's generational because the other day I said to somebody who was younger, not that there's anything wrong with that, and they didn't know what I was talking about. Like they were discussing one of their friends. I don't know. Oh, my gay best friend. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and they didn't know. So some of the things that I find to be the most quotable about the show, I think the younger generation right now, especially Friends, is rerunning all of the time. I don't think Seinfeld has had that quotability with
the next generation. Whereas I think this generation, like a millennial generation, is still watching Friends. Like young people are watching Friends on repeats. Seinfeld, maybe not as much, but if it's on, I'm still turning it on.
Me too. I think people are afraid of the slogan, it's a show about nothing, though. At this point, I don't think that is clever for people to be like, oh, I want to watch that. But for us, that was everything. I want to watch the show about nothing.
Right, exactly. So do you think, okay, so if we're looking at probably some of the most quotable or whatever kind of things, I say, yeah, gay, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's anything wrong with
Nothing,
that.
anything wrong with that, which is a hysterical episode. Yada, 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 which you said. I think Man Hands might be one of my favorites.
Yeah,
she had
definitely.
Man Hands.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about it, like that person has man hands.
And I think that one snuck its way into culture without people even realize where people use that expression all the time, don't even know where it came from.
Right.
So I wonder if that would have ever been an expression, or if a different show came out and they were like, you have giraffe hands.
Right. Like, are there geniuses out there that would have given us man hands in an episode?
I don't know.
And if we had, in the current TV landscape, if a show gets 6 episodes over a summer and it gets hated, there's no possible way they put it on a fall lineup, right?
I don't know, because think about Parks and Rec. I'm not talking about the summer, but I'm talking about a 6-episode hated first season.
Really? I loved it.
The first 6 episodes of Parks and Rec.
Yeah. I loved the pilot.
Blah, 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 foxes.
Really? You didn't like the first couple seasons?
Whether I like them or not, which I don't, they're very, very disliked. That show was almost canceled.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, it got the Seinfeld treatment, which means people know that means bad first season, giving it a second shot.
So Seinfeld actually coined its own outside of TV, inside industry kind of a situation. It got the Seinfeld treatment. So without Seinfeld, we don't even have
a Seinfeld treatment.
We don't even have that Seinfeld treatment.
What would we even call it?
What? Yeah. And so if we didn't have Seinfeld, we don't have. First of all, we don't have the careers. I don't think we don't have the careers of Julie Louis-Dreyfus.
What do you think she would have done? You don't think she ever would have hit?
Well, here's the thing: is she was on Saturday Night Live briefly. Seinfeld came along and turned her into an overnight star. Then she goes into the Old Adventures of New Christine, or the New Adventures of Old Christine.
I always effed that up, but I think it's that second one.
New Adventures of Old Christine.
And then into Veep.
And then into Veep, right? She wins an Emmy for each one of those shows.
She won an Emmy for Old New.
Yeah.
New Old.
New Old. Yeah. One of the few network comedies in the last probably 20 years to give a Emmy to a lead actress in that kind of situation. Because once Netflix, HBO, and all that kind of stuff hit, they were winning pretty much every lead actress Emmy. So a lot of nominations.
So do you
obviously,
think she would have made it to New Adventures? And do you think she would have made it to Veep sans Seinfeld?
Well, okay. I think if you're looking back at those, if Seinfeld doesn't hit, she's in that weird area of like, where do we put her? There wasn't a lot of shows that had a single female that was hysterical and Elaine, because honestly, Elaine was one of the boys, and in my opinion, the most no holds bar of all of them.
I agree. And I think that although with her and Jerry at times they did touch upon their previous relationship and whatnot, she was not put on the show to be the love interest of any of the lead guys. And that was really unique, especially for that time. But even today, if the show came out, you don't see many characters like that, especially when you have even in something like New Girl. Literally exactly what I was thinking.
See?
Even though she is the lead, she's kind of, from the start. With
she's
Nick,
going to get with somebody.
Yeah, even if you don't know who, and we kind of go back and forth for a second, eventually she's
another show that sort of got a Seinfeld treatment because it was short order and they reshot the pilot. Basically, they shot the pilot and then Damon Wayans Jr. went over to Happy Endings and then they just kept the show going and then kind of brought him back in. And Kramer was originally supposed to be called Kessler. And he wasn't even really in the pilot when they wrote it, and then they put him in it, named him Kramer, and then basically Newman became the Kessler of the whole thing.
Why did we change Kessler to Kramer?
I'm not sure. They never because the actual guy's name was Kessler, and he wanted money, and they said, "F it, we'll just call him Kramer."
That's amazing.
Right?
It's a harder name to whine.
Kessler
is harder than Kramer.
Yeah.
This is how I picture writers' rooms working. Guys, can you whine this for me? Let me hear what whines better.
Right.
Oh, sure. 15 times. Kramer.
Nailed it. And do you think that without Kramer, we have that like crazy neighbor role going forward?
I mean,
because you've always had like a sort of crazy neighbor, but nobody, because you need in lexicon, in like a TV lexicon, we need our Kramer. Who's our Kramer?
I think not only do we not have that, and not only do we not have our Newman, because that was pretty new, but just the concept of having a show with all characters you don't like what ended up being on It's Always Sunny or any of those shows. Not saying that you don't love the Seinfeld characters, but you don't look at those and say, oh, I wish that was my best friend.
Yes.
They kind of suck.
Right.
They're not good friends. They're not good people. They have redeeming qualities, but it started a new age of television where you can have lead roles that are not people that you particularly like.
Yes.
That are annoying.
I mean, all of them are very unlikable, against the golden rule type of people, like treat your fellow man as you want to be treated. None of the Seinfeld people treat anybody like they'd want to be treated.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely not.
So you have the zany neighbor, you have your Kramer, you have your Newman. So those characters going forward, because a lot of shows rarely had those comeback ancillary characters like Seinfeld, right? You never really saw guys that were Kramer's friends, like Bob Sacamano, you never met him. Jay Reemschneider, you never met him. Those kind of guys that were just made up. Also, you had George working for an actual Major League Baseball team. They were able to use the Yankees name, the New York Yankees.
It's pretty unbelievable.
In a television show with Larry David playing the voice of George Steinbrenner. I don't think any owner in any league, major sports professional, would, one, let a sitcom use their team name, and two, mock the owner of the team.
But do you think that's because Seinfeld had that and they were like, no, we're not doing this moving forward? Because you think that would have opened the door, but I feel like it closed the door for future of that.
I think you're right. So if we don't have Seinfeld, then maybe there are shows out there now that have an owner. But if we don't have Seinfeld, then we don't have the fake George Steinbrenner. And to be honest with you, I think that the Yankees actually gained success off the success of Seinfeld and made George Steinbrenner more of a pop culture icon.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Going back to your list of the slogans too, to me the most famous one that I'm always using, and I feel like even if you don't watch Seinfeld, you've seen this episode, that I literally always say to people, no soup for you.
Right.
No soup for you.
100%.
But I use it in not soup settings.
Right. It's like
no matter what I'm doing.
That's going to be a no for me, dog, is the no soup for you.
No soup for you.
Yeah. And even people would know the no soup for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Or just the terminology of putting somebody as a Nazi. Mm-hmm. Sounds like a horrible thing to say, but you're a blank Nazi. You're a soup Nazi.
The soup Nazi.
And so I feel like that became more acceptable in pop culture too.
100%.
Because people call you whatever you're a stickler about.
Yeah.
Nazi kind of became like a more regular.
You're a drink Nazi.
Yeah, you're whatever blank Nazi, whatever you're tough about. But everybody's like, well, there's Jews on the show, so they can. It's fine.
Right.
They can do it. What do you think happens to Seinfeld if there is no Seinfeld?
Oh, man, that's a really good point, because I love Jerry Seinfeld, and I think his stand-up is great. But I think without Seinfeld, that observational humor kind of goes out the window. But because of Seinfeld, he's able to parlay that into an entire career. Whereas if he doesn't get the show and Seinfeld isn't that, I don't think that Seinfeld is a successful comedian past 1997. If he doesn't have the biggest show on TV.
Looking at where he is now, do we ultimately
Because he's G-rated to PG-rated when it comes to his comedy.
That's true. That's true. And he's proud of that and says he doesn't want to change, didn't want to make it different.
Great.
Do you think that ultimately Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee would have, somehow his career would have ended him up in the exact same place that he is now? Or do you think that he never would have gotten there?
No, here's the thing. I think that TV was such back then where I think it's a little bit different now. If you had your shot at a sitcom and it didn't go, you were kind of forgotten about because there was only, 5 or 6 stations back in 89 and you didn't have all these cable networks. I think if Seinfeld does, look at somebody like a Chris D'Elia, right? He does that show with Whitney Cummings. It does a few seasons. It's okay. Then he gets that show with Brett Morin. But now he's like a touring headliner kind of off of those two shows and getting movie deals and all this kind of stuff off that. I think that if Seinfeld gets his show, and he was on the Tonight Show a bunch of times and everything, he gets the show, it doesn't go, we may not know anything about Jerry Seinfeld. We definitely won't know anything about Larry David. Larry Charles was already...
No Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Definitely no Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Even if he had made a different show that wasn't Seinfeld, After Seinfeld doesn't work for some reason, people don't like it, they don't pick it up. He creates some other sitcom invention. Never do we get a Curb.
I don't think that the world would tolerate a Larry David and his mindset and how he behaves if we didn't have George Costanza. Because George Costanza laid the PG to PG-13 groundwork to get us to the R-rated Larry David. He laid that groundwork that was perfect enough. The curmudgeon, the apathetic loser, the empathetic loser, the person that you were like, George is never going to get it right. The episode, the George opposite episode when he goes, you know what? I've had tuna salad every day. I'm having chicken salad on rye, whatever. And the Jerry's line's like, well, the opposite of tuna salad would be more like salmon salad or something because they swim upstream, right? That's the best. And he goes up to that girl and he's like, I'm single, I'm unemployed, and I live with my parents. And she goes, I'm Renee or whatever. That's the lovable loser that is George Costanza. The episode where he goes without sex and Elaine is having too much sex. Or no,
masturbation episode?
No. Well,
that one's so good.
I think that may be one of the top 10 episodes in TV history.
Yeah.
The contest. Because that was the first time that you had really talked about that on TV, let alone network TV. And maybe even in movies.
With an effing woman.
With a woman.
Which is like, and no holds bar. Like you said, no shame.
Nothing.
She's part of it.
I mean, hell, the one episode, Elaine is talking about the sponge, which no longer exists, which is, I think, like, I mean, I know it's a form of birth control, but the sponge is no longer sold because of health reasons.
Right.
I mean, I think the sponge was developed in the 30s.
Not good for you.
It's not good for you. Toxic shock kind of stuff, right?
TSS. That's a real thing. People still get that sometimes.
Yeah. It's scary.
Donate to the cause. Not sure how, but I know
Put
you
it
can.
on a pillow.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that we ever get that kind of way what's the deal with that? Like that intonation?
No.
You don't think we ever?
I think Jerry Seinfeld basically didn't invent it, but he perfected it. And you don't have to be, I mean, Edison really didn't invent electricity. Tesla did, but he perfected it. And people will be like, oh, you can argue that all you want.
What can I perfect? Because I don't want to invent anything.
Well, you
Foxes.
You haven't perfected the pronunciation of St. Louis yet, but we're getting there.
One of these days.
One of them.
What's the deal
with St. Louis? I mean, Illinois. Ends with an S.
And you don't pronounce it.
No. Louis Pasteur is spelled the same way as St. Louis. And St. Louis was a French saint. So it could have been St. Louis.
I think you're onto something.
Thank you.
Jason Alexander. Do we ever see him? Does he ever book?
Here's the thing. I think that for the rest of his life, Jason Alexander will be a Broadway and a theater actor because that's what he was before Seinfeld, right? I think he was Poncho at one point on Broadway and Don Quixote. He was doing bit roles in a ton of different shows and stuff, but he was always doing Broadway, off Broadway because he has a fantastic voice. He's a great singer. I just think that is such it is such a niche character as far as body type. And as far as delivery and likability, that you can't. That was the perfect storm of Seinfeld, right? Because not only did Seinfeld create you a George Costanza, right? And you could Costanza, right? That lovable thing. Like, what would George Costanza do? The line that we always use is, it's not a lie if you believe it, right? That George Costanza line is that you can be that likable jerk somehow. And he's like, well, he's kind of a Costanza. And everyone's like, oh, he's a Costanza, which is how we get Curb Your Enthusiasm and how we get Larry David.
And how we get Shallow Hal.
And thank
which
you.
Which is very important to bring up.
It's a great movie. The little tail at the end. Ugh, she got that hammer toe. I mean, and we also have, like basically little reincarnations of the George Costanza in so many different shows, right? Because if you didn't have Seinfeld, you don't have that modern model of what a sitcom should look like, right?
Do you think we get as many with no Seinfeld? Is the apartment situational New York sitcom a thing?
I think that because we both basically had two separate things, right? You had the young people in the apartment or you had the family in the home, and it was the same setup across the board. Look at the Carmichael show. Gerard Carmichael's apartment looked exactly like Seinfeld's apartment.
Yeah.
This new show, Fam, on ABC with Tone Bell and Nina Dobrev. I've seen the behind-the-scenes picture. It looks just like Seinfeld. I think that that apartment I mean, Three's Company kind of a situation, but that apartment look, that walk in from there with the kitchen right there and the couch right there, that became what became, that 2 apartments set up in Friends. That's what that looked like, because before
Where
that,
you definitely can't afford the style that you're living.
no, 100%. Good thing that Grandma, what was it in the final episode? Grandma left it to us and rent was rent control.
Yeah.
I don't think you have that. I don't.
What do you think about because I think, what if Seinfeld, one of the 4 of them, had not been a white person? Do you think that way quicker would we have gotten more shows like Friends or whatever was to follow with
A diverse
diversity? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, did they set the tone for it's okay to have your
all white
4
people.
main people? Yeah.
Well, I think, back in the day, I think it was either you were a white cast or you were a black cast, or you were an Asian cast, or whatever the case may be, a Latin cast kind of a situation where there was no like mingling of the cultures, right? And that's, Seinfeld
That was the
went to
80s
Friends.
and the 90s on
Yeah.
TV, for sure.
And that went into shows like How I Met Your Mother, which was an all-white cast. Whereas now that won't exist, or that doesn't exist quite like that. A show like Last Man Standing or The Conners, an all-white cast. But for the most part, if you're doing a sitcom with young people, it's pretty much
New girl. You have to have.
You have to have.
Make sure you're not having all men, all white people. You've got to have.
Yeah, the whole thing. Which I don't think that comedy sees color sometimes. I really don't. I think in drama they search the diversity way more into the psyche, whereas in comedy it's just kind of like, this is who we are. We're just human people. Again, looking at diversity back then, just because it was the late 80s and into the 90s, it wasn't so. Which is a shame. It wasn't important to Hollywood.
Yeah, I just wonder how much, because Seinfeld set such a tone for sitcoms, and I wonder, with all of the amazing things that they did, were there ways they could have gone even further to advance sitcoms at that time?
Right.
Because they were ahead of their time.
It's a very good question.
And what that would have meant for the future.
Right. Would Friends have had an Asian guy or a black girl or whatever?
Right.
Because remember, at one point Ross was dating Aisha Tyler.
Yeah.
But again, you're right. When I talk to somebody like RB3, he's like, I didn't like Friends because it was all white people, and that makes total sense. There was no representation of the people on television.
And I do think so. Say that, I don't know,
Chandler was black.
Well, even before, I'm saying, say that in Seinfeld, say one of them was an Asian man.
Like I always thought,
Kramer was an Asian man.
What if Kramer was Chris Rock?
Okay, if Kramer was Chris Rock, that would have been actually epic.
Right.
Then would Friends have seen that and been like, you know what, we really need to strive for this?
Yeah.
And then would How I Met
Joey
Your
Chris
Mother?
Tucker?
Yeah. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know, but I wonder. And I honestly, at the time, I feel like it wasn't even a
nobody was even talking about it. And that's why the disenfranchisement of the whole situation is important now.
Yeah.
That doesn't take away. I don't know where that directionally heads us if we're looking at like a Back to the Future timeline.
Well,
I'm not going to do the Barry.
What if Seinfeld? Because the question was,
what if Seinfeld doesn't exist?
What if it didn't exist? And then I kind of broke off into what if it existed in different forms?
Yes. So you're in the different timeline now.
Yeah, but if it didn't exist, there's so many things that.
Because before that, let's say, what was the huge sitcom before Seinfeld? Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah.
Cheers was all white for the most part, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Frasier,
for the most part,
all white.
Yeah.
And then into Seinfeld, all white. Friends, all white. I guess the next biggest comedy after that would be like How I Met Your Mother, into Big Bang Theory, all white, all white.
Wow, Big Bang Theory is so wild. I just don't think of that in the same way. But
I know.
it is. It's the biggest.
2.5 Men, all white. So there are a lot of.
It set a tone.
It did set a tone. Had they.
And it had followed a tone that had been set, but it had the ability, I think, to break out.
Yes.
And again, for what the show is, it's one of my favorites of all time. So
Sure.
This is not knocking it or its time. I always do wonder if one of these shows earlier on had made the point to be like, this isn't right because it's not an accurate representation of reality.
No.
Then would things have been different?
Yeah. Because, in every episode, Jerry has a new girlfriend.
Yeah.
Right? Each episode is basically about nothing. There are few running storylines through the show, right? There's the fact that Elaine has Putty for a few seasons because he was so memorable. There are a few recurring characters that you think are like Dr. Tim Watley, the dentist. You had, I mean, only a couple of Jerry's girlfriends lasted. You had Susan, who was George's fiance for a few seasons, but then she went away,
yeah.
right? So the fact that you could create a standalone show like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Does Seinfeld create that standalone sitcom which really hadn't existed before? Because, the Cosby Show before that, had a lot of through lines that were, going across. They were kind of standalone episodes. But
I Love Lucy had a ton of through lines also,
Agreed.
actually.
Yeah.
I mean, you can pop in at any point and enjoy, but they definitely...
But rarely would a storyline from one episode of Seinfeld carry on to the other besides a few small relationships.
Yeah, and you know what? I feel like that didn't stick immediately.
Right.
Like a lot more in Friends did carry through, and I think it took people a little bit to be like, what they did in Seinfeld, we should do here, actually.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, 100%. So, if Seinfeld doesn't exist, I think we've come up with like 3 pretty decent hypotheses, right? If Seinfeld doesn't exist, we definitely do not have Curb Your Enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. I think that the situational humor, the show about nothing, if the show about nothing doesn't take off, we can't have more shows about nothing.
Definitely. I mean, I would add more shows to that list even too.
Right. What would you throw in there?
If Seinfeld doesn't exist, I don't think that we get New Adventures of Old Christine and Veep in the way that they are.
Correct.
I don't think that we end up getting Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. Yep. I don't think that we get...
Remember the short-lived Kramer spinoff? We definitely don't get that.
Although if we did, that would be wild.
Fantastic.
We haven't even talked much about him and what his career would have looked like without Seinfeld. But I have no guesses on...
because
he would have shot himself in the foot at some point.
Regardless. Yeah, I think. But Kramer... That character, that actor, that whole situation was so tailor-made for him that I don't know where I honestly I have no idea in the entertainment landscape where a Michael Richards would be. Because he was in a movie like UHF where he plays like a goofball. He always played like the physical comedy kind of weirdo. I don't think that because Seinfeld was on such a plane of existence that only existed in our minds and they looked after subject matter that a lot of shows wouldn't touch. When you think about it, they went after a ton of different storylines that we wouldn't touch these days.
Not with a 10-foot pole.
And also, when you look at it, they came up with the formula of tying the first joke to the last joke. Like it was one big callback, and all 3 storylines came back to that original one joke, right? Mm-hmm. So, and Larry David talks about the one episode where it came to do it, but Kramer's storyline, Jerry's storyline, Elaine's storyline, or George's storyline, depending on the A, B, and C. A, B, and C always met with D at the end. So they all had separate storylines that somehow all came together in the end. That was the Seinfeld.
That's the format.
That's the Seinfeld formula. I mean, Cheers rarely did that. All that kind of thing. It was just a story told with jokes, and it had an ending. Seinfeld's was all like 3 storylines that all came together in the end.
Did they create the bottle episode with the Chinese restaurant episode, or were bottle episodes?
Like where it's standalones in one place?
One or previously built places like The Fly on Breaking Bad. Because I don't remember prior to that there being a...
They've talked about certain shows that have tried it, but Seinfeld did it.
Yeah.
That Chinese episode
is so good, the Chinese restaurant.
And you're talking about probably 20 to 25 episodes of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia that do bottle episodes, and there isn't a show that has done a bottle episode quite like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia since Seinfeld. So it's like Seinfeld, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and that's that.
Yeah. There were a couple on Friends. There were like that Breaking Bad one, The Fly, which I love.
They did one on Sopranos. Remember the Pine Barrens episode? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that one is the one that's constantly referenced because with no money you could still make because the characters.
I know you hear a lot of like TV writers that have been around for a while that have watched that episode the first time and thought to themselves, "Holy crap, we didn't know we could do that."
Yeah.
Because that's what that whole episode.
It looks so easy.
So easy. When you think about it, you got to write a 27-page script to fit 22 minutes, or even 30-page script to fit 22 minutes in a sitcom script in one location. George is calling somebody on the thing. Elaine is very hungry, and Jerry just wants the table.
Yep.
That's it.
They got to make the movie.
They got to make it.
Yeah.
When you think about the original question, what if Seinfeld didn't exist? It's more confusing than a Flashpoint episode of The Flash because it just goes in all these different directions and nobody knows what to do with it. But if you just take that one point in time and you don't have it, you don't have
future shows.
You don't have future shows. I don't think the TV landscape is completely changed,
especially the sitcom landscape,
and especially the female role in TV landscape. To me, you don't have a Phoebe. Because Phoebe is this totally independent woman that is kind of crazy. I mean, Monica to a certain extent, her craziness, but...
Well, because what's great about Elaine is that she's still smart.
Yes.
And so Phoebe, even though she's out there, she's still smart.
Yes.
Wild, weird, savvy.
Correct.
And so that's different than what we had seen before, which is crazy, dumb.
Right. Just straight up dumb. And a man has to come and help her. Elaine doesn't need a man. She never needed a man at all. And there were, I think about to like Family Guy, right? There's been a couple episodes where they're like, yep, this is a Meg episode. You can turn away if you want, right? If there was an Elaine episode, it was just as strong as if it was a Jerry A line, a George A line, or a Kramer A line. In my opinion.
I agree. I agree. The one quick thing that we haven't touched on, though, does the finale change what the landscape is? If there had been no Seinfeld, does it not make it as strong of a show because of the finale that was so controversial that most people didn't like? If it had been a stronger finale, do you think it could have changed the game even more?
Because I'm one of the people that liked the finale.
Okay. Well, it's too hard for you to answer.
What do you think?
I think it didn't have any effect on the show. I think that if there had been no Seinfeld finale, it would be the exact same as if there had been, because the show was so strong that last episode people just were like, didn't like it, but whatever, the show.
Right. That's it.
Yeah.
And it ended like it should have, which is just, it's a show about nothing, and somehow these guys just got what was coming to them because they messed up.
I still think it's a stupid-ass finale.
Do you really?
Yeah, it's so stupid.
Okay. Here's our final hypothetical question with Seinfeld. If you could end the show, how would you have ended it?
Just another episode, I think. Just another episode.
I don't think you can do that with the buildup that was Seinfeld.
Why are we in court? Why are we in court?
You don't like it. You don't like it.
I don't like it. I hate foxes.
She doesn't like it. All right. I think that's our first show. What do you think?
Yeah.
Did you have fun?
I did. Seinfeld changed the game, man.
It really did.
Let's go watch.
Yeah. I'm Josh McCouga at Josh McCouga.
I'm Roxy Stryer at Roxy Stryer.
You guys can watch all kinds of fun stuff on the Collider Podcast channel. Just look up Collider TV Talk. Subscribe to the channel. Tell everybody about it. Watch all the other shows on Collider, Collider Podcast, Collider Sports, all Collider games. You can see my creepy VR stuff that I do.
I feel so bad for you.
I've resigned to the fact that somehow people like this stuff, so I have to keep doing it. You guys can. We're going to do this show every week. We're going to record on Wednesdays. I think they'll either go up on Wednesdays or Thursdays. We haven't figured that out yet. But we wanted to test it to see how it went. I thought it was a great time.
Yeah, I want to know what questions that they have.
Yeah,
and also your thoughts on what would happen if Seinfeld never exists. But like, what other hypotheticals are you thinking about? We were getting a little weird in our brainstorm session. I know.
So we've written a lot down, but we want to hear from you guys. So just hashtag it Collider TV Talk and at Roxy Stryer and myself.
Jocks on Fox.
Jocks on Fox. JOXONFOX. Jocks on Fox. And that's our hypothetical questions. What if we never had a show? You don't even have to answer it. As always, put down the book, pick up the remote.